spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
There's a rap song from the late 90s, early 2000s. The name of it is just Walk It Out. Now walk it out, now walk it out, now walk it out. I think the leaders need to learn that principle, but maybe not walk it out or even walk it off like the coach used to tell you, but talk it out. Just talk it out. If you've ever been in a role of leadership, you know how easy sometimes it is to be perceived by the people you lead as someone with just both fingers in their ears or their hands over their ears, their earmuffs on, their earplugs in, not listening to what's going on around you, just always spouting orders, ideas, and opinions. That is not a good way to lead. It's not an effective way to lead. Leaders have to be willing to listen. But leaders never underestimate the power of a simple conversation. And that's what I want to talk about today on Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you the number of times when I worked in corporate America, and even the times since then, whether you're talking about a brief sales meeting or talking about just a chat over coffee, the number of times that what would have been massive problems, big, gigantic crises within an organization, marketing strategy meetings and tactic meetings couldn't solve these problems that we were running into. But by walking down the hallway with somebody to grab a cup of coffee or walking through the corridors of big business on the way to the snack shop to grab a sausage biscuit for breakfast, we solved more problems in that walking time than the 92 emails that had preceded it. It wasn't about the emails and the punctualities and all of the niceties and politeness that are required for a corporate email. It was about 2 people hashing it out. There was one particular guy named Chris Fry. Chris and I met in sales training back in the 90s. For 10 years plus, we were at the same company together doing a very similar, if not sometimes competitive job. And there were times that his ideas and my ideas had to come to an agreement in the middle. And there were times that we were very vocal in our expressions of why my idea was right, why his idea was right, and why we had to put it together. And on more than one occasion, we had people come to us after a meeting and go, "You guys fight like a married couple. It's amazing that you get along at all." And I'm like, "No, we live in the same neighborhood. We hang out after work. I mean, it's not that big a deal to us. We just both are willing to stand our ground." But I can also tell you that all those meetings that people thought we were just going at each other's throats, that neither one of us were ever going to see things the other one's way. But what we really found was that if we met each other on the way to grab breakfast in the morning or grab a cup of coffee, when the 2 of us got in the elevator and it was just the 2 of us, we could hash it out, and before we got from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor, have an answer that was amicable. It was usually the interjection of all the other people trying to spout their opinions or their ideas into our conversation, the interruptions, the delays, the distractions, the derailings. That's what usually caused the problem. It was the simple conversations. You say your piece, I say my piece, you listen when I talk, I listen when you talk. Those were the ones that seemed to get the farthest. And I want you to understand too, as a leader, sometimes that's not about position or rank. Sometimes that willingness to have a conversation requires the humility to say, "You know what? I know you're a new employee. I know you have new ideas of your own, and maybe you haven't even seen all of the troubled waters under this bridge up to this point. But I'm going to take a minute and hear you out. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what you're thinking. Even if we've already thought that, tried that, processed that, and it didn't work then, at least I can get you up to speed on where we're at. And maybe I'll hear something I hadn't thought of before. See, the challenge with some leaders is that they don't want to listen at all. In their minds, they've already figured it all out. It's all been resolved. They have the answer. You just need to do what they told you to. Well, that tyrannical kind of leadership doesn't genuinely lend to A, teamwork, and B, good results. Because the best brain you've got working on this is only one, and it's yours. And if you think back to when we talked about having a mastermind where other people feed into the same concept until a solution is derived, you can't do that when the only voice being heard is the leader. Now, here's another challenge that we find too, and that is often people who have strong ideas, they've been in management for a long time. I sat yesterday with a gentleman who was a high-level contractor and a high-ranking reservist in the military for many, many years before he retired. Now, I didn't sit with him because I set out to sit with him. In fact, yesterday morning, I took a couple of books that I wanted to read, and I went to a quiet little place in town. It's a really quiet little place most of the time. And usually I can go in there and sit with my coffee and read for 3 or 4 hours and nobody cares. They'll serve me some breakfast, have a nice chat with the waitress, and enjoy my time reading, and nobody cares that I'm there. This guy, though, a couple of weeks ago, I wore my veteran's hat into breakfast, and he was sitting there with his wife. He recognized my hat. That started a conversation from his table to my table. We talked back and forth. Soon several tables had joined in. We had quite the conversation over breakfast with several people in this little cafe. Well, yesterday morning I went in thinking I was going to be by myself. She pointed me to a nice seat, and as I walked to my seat, I see the same guy sitting at a table by himself. He clears off half the table and says, "Please have a seat." 2 hours later, it was time for him to go, and I had got no reading done. I was a little frustrated with that, but in reality, this is a guy that if we met on the streets or if we'd met over a corporate board meeting, the odds that we would see eye to eye are pretty close to zero because our worldviews are different by that much. However, over a 2-hour period of just simple conversation, we found a whole lot of common ground. Not only common experiences, but common ideas, and even some places where he would have said probably 5 days ago, I could never see eye to eye on that, and I might have as well. But a simple conversation with literally a stranger 2 weeks ago led to a much deeper, I guess you could call it friendship at this point, a better understanding, a more mutual ground of conversation and ideologies. How many times, though, do we find that everybody's shouting their opinions at such a loud volume that no one really gets heard? No one's really listening because they're too busy shouting. They want to get their way. They want to impose their will. They want to make sure that you see things the way they see things. And if you don't, you must be wrong. See, that's a problem. That's a problem not only in leadership, it's a problem in our society, and it's a problem that's beginning to inundate culture. If I don't like you, I'll just use the heckler's veto. I'll shout, I will dismantle your arguments, not by facts that are better than your facts or more accurate than your facts, but by simply shouting my opinion until no one else can hear you. Leaders know that a simple conversation, a really basic, you talk, they listen, they talk, you listen, kind of a conversation, actually intentionally hearing each other's points out, makes an enormous difference in the quality of the relationship you have, the quality of the leadership you have. And those two things are necessary to have the influence that you want to have to see transformation come about. Whether that's in your team, it's in a culture, it's in a society. Transformation doesn't happen without influence, and influence doesn't happen without a simple conversation. If you're a leader at any level, if you want to see your leadership rise, you want to see the competence of your leadership rise, the magnitude of your influence rise, the depth of your legacy rise, start with a simple conversation. Take the time to speak your piece and then listen. and let the other person speak theirs. It doesn't matter if they work for you or you work for them. It doesn't matter if you're business competitors or have competing ideas within the organization. Take the time to speak your piece, then listen. Let them speak their piece and listen. It's called a conversation. It's very valuable between parents and teenagers, and very valuable between team members of any level, and very valuable in the culture and societies that we live in. It's even valuable, simple conversations, on a geopolitical level. And there really should be more of it. But training on how to have a simple conversation starts with parents and kids. Starts with an adult listening to their child express their thoughts and their feelings at least long enough to get them out. Now here's a reality. If you've ever been in that place where you just feel the frustration and the angst of not being heard, there's a strange psychological phenomenon that takes place when you get a chance to express your voice. Here's part of that strange phenomenon. That strange phenomenon sometimes is in your head, you're processing a thought, an opinion, an idea. There's emotion in it. There's angst in it. There's anxiety in it. But the minute it comes out of your mouth, you're like, that was kind of dumb. I mean, if you've ever found yourself at any point in life saying, did I really just say that out loud? Or, that sounded a lot better in my head. Then you're the victim of not having simple conversations. You're the person who hasn't taken the time to speak, to be heard, and then stop long enough to listen as people give you feedback on what you just said. If you take the time to have a simple conversation, there's a real good chance as a leader that someone who's been beating on your door to get your attention for a long time and not gotten that attention, there's a real good chance that when they get a chance to voice their opinion, that opportunity alone will allow them to hear the idea that they've been so determined to deliver and realize just how silly it is. That's not always the case. Sometimes people have an opinion they've been carrying for a long time and a whole lot of emotion and angst and anxiety attached to it. And when they get a chance to vent it, it lifts them up and it puts them on a pedestal and they feel like I'm in charge of the world now because you've all heard my opinion and it must be right. That's a different kind of problem you're going to have to deal with. But most of the time, the unheard feels so much better when they get a chance to voice their opinion and actually be listened to intentionally. And they also find in their opinion things that they disagree with themselves. They've just never said it out loud. They've never had an opportunity to say it out loud. And the minute they do, they go, maybe that's not such a good idea. Let me work on it. I'll get back to you. Simple conversations with absolute strangers, with team members, with competitors, with culture. Take the time to have simple conversations. Listen, speak. Listen, speak. It's a rotational thing. It's not that complicated. It does take a little humility and a little kindness. But leaders who use simple conversations will go a lot further in influence and transformation. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.